An escalating row playing out in the Gulf media. Alleged fake news threatening to cause a real rift in a key regional alliance. Last week, Qatari state media published a speech by Emir Sheikh Tamin bin Hamad Al Thani across different platforms. He accused other Gulf Cooperation Council countries of working against Qatar and gave a thinly veiled criticism of Saudi Arabia, saying some governments have caused terror by adopting an extreme version of Islam. He also called Hamas the legitimate representative of the Palestinian people, said it's unwise to increase tensions with Iran, and suggested that US President Donald Trump may not last long in power. State media also published a statement from the foreign minister saying Qatari ambassadors had been recalled from neighbouring countries. The reports caused outrage, with Saudi Arabia, Bahrain and the UAE blocking Qatari media, including Al Jazeera. But there's one issue. Qatar says none of this ever happened.
The website of the Qatar news agency was attacked by hackers. They posted a false statement attributed to the Emir, which has nothing to do with the Emir at all. We have launched an inquiry to investigate the crime. We will find the perpetrator and prosecute them.
This scandal comes on the back of Donald Trump's meeting with GCC leaders in Riyadh last week, a summit which saw an increase in the allies' aggressive rhetoric towards Iran. This row resembles a rift between Qatar and the GCC in 2014. Saudi Arabia, the UAE and Bahrain withdrew their ambassadors from Doha in protest of Qatari support for the Muslim Brotherhood. The breakdown in relations lasted 8 months. Qatar has been trying to downplay and diffuse the current tensions. But critics have been sceptical of Qatar's hacking claims, arguing it's offered no evidence. And regional outlets continue to run the reports as fact, even after Qatar's denials. On top of that, Sheikh Tamin and Iranian President Hassan Rouhani spoke on the phone on Saturday, discussing how Iran can improve ties with Gulf nations. The UAE's foreign minister has warned the problems facing GCC unity are very real, tweeting that the GCC countries are going through a new crisis in sedition that carries a serious danger, and that prevention of sedition lies in changing behaviour, building trust, and restoring credibility. Is this just a media storm that will soon subside? Or has this alleged fake news hack highlighted deeper wounds and suspicions that threaten the Gulf's brotherly unity? Yvette McCullough, The Newsmakers.
Well, to discuss this further, I'm joined by Hussam Abu Gabel from Dubai. He's an editor for the Middle East Economic Digest. From London, Andreas Krieg, assistant professor in the Department of Defence Studies at King's College London. And from Riyadh, Salman Al-Ansari. He's the founder of the Washington, D.C.-based Saudi American Public Relations Affairs Committee. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. Hussam, let me begin with you. As our viewers can see, you're on Skype. We actually booked a studio in Dubai for you. The studio operator asked us, what's your topic going to be? We said the GCC Qatar row or spat. They then cancelled the booking. They said we can't do that booking. I mean, I guess that gives an indication as to the sensitivity of this topic right now. It's fascinating and kind of mind-blowing. Is the GCC in crisis, Hussam?
Crisis is a strong word to use for the GCC. And as your report mentions, a similar situation happened in 2014, and it only took 8 months for the countries to overcome what happened. But definitely an interesting moment for GCC relations and an uncertain moment for GCC relations, particularly at a time when Saudi Arabia is increasingly concerned over Iran's increasing influence in the region. So definitely an interesting time.
Okay, interesting time. Salman Al-Ansari, does Qatar deserve to be isolated?
Thank you, Imran, and thanks to all the viewers of TRT. I think it's not a matter of does Qatar deserve or not deserve. It's a matter of will Qatar be a normal nation where they do not disturb the peace in the region or not? That's a question that should be basically asked to the Qataris, that they are the ones who need to basically just use normal diplomacy. You cannot have this form of duality through which you can be with me and against me at the same time. We all know that Qatar has been basically part of the issue in the region, not part of the solution. So we need to see Qatar to basically get back to its consensus, get back to its consciousness, and do not go and serve some policies of some rivals, just like the Iran regime. We all know that there are some leaks of intelligence reports that spoke clearly about the foreign minister of Qatar to be meeting with the Quds forces leader, Qasem Soleimani. We need a clarification from the Qatari government about that. We are not speaking only about the report of Tamin and what he said, even though we believe he said it.
And we're going to talk about a bunch of these things, right? We're going to talk about Qatar's foreign policy, and some people see it as contradictory and so on. I'm going to talk about all of that and its interests, right? People see Qatar as two-faced.
Sure.
I lived in Doha for many years. I worked for Al Jazeera. I'm used to that accusation, seeing that accusation come towards the Qataris for many, many years. But in terms of this actual report being the trigger, they say it was fake news. They say it was a hacking attempt. Do you believe them, Salman?
Not at all. I'll tell you why. First of all, let's assume that the whole report of what Tamin has said was hacked, or like the whole channels were hacked and nothing happened. Okay, let's assume that. So let's take the words of the same statement and try to match it with the actions. We will realize that it's 100% match. So all what has been said in the Qatari media agency, which is run by the government, and also their TV channels, are actually identical to the practices of the Qatari government. So the idea that it was basically hacked is just like, I don't think we can basically get it so easily.
Okay,
it's just something that
yeah, good point. Let me pose that to Andreas then. Andreas, it wasn't hacked. He said it, most likely, according to Salman. And one of the reasons why it seems as if he did say it is because it's consistent with current Qatari policy, according to Salman. What do you think, Andreas?
Well, I completely disagree with what the other two speakers were saying. First of all, the cunning thing about this entire, whether this was a hack or a leak, the very cunning thing here is that it seems to resemble some of the allegations, as you said, that the GCC and the others in the Arab world have brought forward towards Qatar. In reality, however, I mean, I've lived in Qatar for many years and I've worked for the military there. I've been to many graduation parties or ceremonies before. The Emir does not give such speeches on such occasions. He doesn't, and if he does, then he will never talk about such sensitive issues about foreign and security policy. So I find it highly doubtful that these hacks were actually, or that these comments actually came from the Emir himself. Okay. It looks more like. It looks more like it was an inside job. So even if it was leaked throughout various different outlets, it seems like these people were compromised on the inside of the Q&A, which is very easy to do if you consider how many international people are working there who might get exposed, who are exposed to secret services from all over the place.
So let me then ask you, Andreas, are you saying that Qatar is actually on side with the other GCC countries in trying to squeeze and isolate Iran? Do you believe that they're fully on side with that policy?
I don't think this is a GCC policy. I think that's a policy that is, in many circles in Saudi Arabia, very dominant in Saudi Arabia. It's very dominant in the UAE, and Bahrain is following usually what Saudi Arabia is doing. Kuwait and Oman, on the other hand, have always had a completely different policy towards Iran. They're not supporting Iran, but they had more one of accommodation rather than confrontation. And Qatar itself, because of the North Field, the gas field that keeps Qatar alive, is shared with Iran. Qatar always had a very sensitive relationship with Iran, and one that was always based on negotiation, mediation, and diplomacy, and not on direct confrontation. However, when it became serious in Yemen, Qatar Qatar was very much on the side of Saudi Arabia. Qatar has always been on the side of Saudi Arabia in recent years, and Sheikh Tamin has always made it clear that he would support any Saudi effort to fight non-state actors on the Arabian Peninsula. Whether they're aligned with Iran or not is not the debate.
Okay, so it's interesting that you spell it out that way. Salman, let's look at it from the Qatari perspective for a second. So it's easy for Saudi Arabia to be kind of hawkish on Iran. Saudi Arabia's a much bigger country, a very wealthy country, a powerful country, right? Qatar is very small and it's wedged between these two powers. And in many ways, it operates like the old city-states of bygone eras, right? Where it tries to kind of keep a decent relationship with everybody just in case the balance of power changes. Do you accept that, yes, it has financial, cultural, political interests that transcend that of the likes of Saudi Arabia and other GCC countries, and that it doesn't see it as too much of a problem to have good relations with countries like Iran, because it's very tiny and it can get swallowed up by bigger powers?
Yeah, our issue, good question, Imran. Our issue is not primarily on whether Qatar wants to have only good relationship with Iran or not, or to have a decent relationship so they do not get squeezed basically by them. But the main issue is basically the complete support of Qatar of all the non-state actors in the regions. That is something, a primary issue we have with the Qatari policy. We all know that the Qatari government is at complete support of the Muslim Brotherhood, which has been banned in the region, which has been labeled as a terrorist group, which has been basically destabilizing the region, which has been basically destabilizing so many parts of the Middle East, including North Africa and Libya, for example. Their support of Fajr Libya, the militias in Libya, their support of Jabhat al-Nusra, which basically they try to market for them after they basically gave them the advice to change their name, Jabhat Jaysh Fath al-Sham, and it's aligned to Al-Qaeda. So we are speaking of a very dangerous policies that are emerging from this tiny country. It's a country that wants to take a bigger role, a role that does not go along with its geographical capacity, with its human resources capacity, with even the financial capacity in the future, because we can see that they are actually having an issue of a financial issue in the future, because they're going to have...
Good points, good points.
Exactly.
Everybody in the region is. Yeah, let me come in. Let me pose it to Hussam. Indeed. Let me pose it to Hussam. Hussam, is Qatar biting off more than it can chew, and is it being reckless with its support of Hamas, Jabhat Fath al-Sham, and all these other groups in the region? Is it doing too much with these non-state actors?
Look, I think Qatar has a clear history in which it supported certain groups across the region that Saudi Arabia doesn't necessarily agree with. And there is an argument that Qatar is biting too much than it can chew, or more than it can chew. But the question is, and this question I kind of posed to Saudi Arabia and to Salman here as well, is why is it that Saudi Arabia continues to reject any denial or any public statements from Qatar, whether it's regarding the quotes from the Emir, or even just a month ago when the foreign minister of Qatar came out and said that Qatar never did and never will support the Muslim Brotherhood. Why is it that the Qatari position is so much, public position is so much aligned with Riyadh, yet Riyadh's public position seems to always counter that and almost try and disprove Qatar's position? Good
question, Salman. You want to tackle that?
Yeah, so basically it's just the speech and the statement as a whole, as I said earlier, is not the issue. It was just like the spark that basically inflamed the public opinion in the region. All the people, or most of the people in the GCC, not only Saudi Arabia, are actually in a position where they already reject all the policies of Qatar. But all of a sudden we see a complete statement to be publicized into the public and have it to be publicized by the main Qatari agency and the TV, the Qatari TV, and also their Instagram and Google Plus and all those things, and they have it for more than 4 hours. And then they say, after they saw the backlash from the communities that it was hacked, I think we are not stupid to that level to be basically believing the Qatari narrative, specifically because all what happened or all what has been written or in the statement is consistent with the Qatari practices. So all what we need from the Qatari government is basically to get back to its consensus, to get back to its mind. It's not good for the Qatari people. The Qatari people are our cousins and our friends. They are very close to all of us as GCC, but we want their government to basically do something because they are harming the relationship of everybody.
Well understood. So let's ask Andreas. They're basically upset. They feel betrayed that there were a bunch of pledges made, especially 3 years ago when the GCC countries came together. The Qataris were on board, and they feel betrayed that the Qataris have not lived up to their pledges. Can you understand that that's why the Saudis are so upset?
No, that's not the reason the Saudis are upset. First of all, I think we need to differentiate here between the political relationships and the social relationships. I think the outcry in Saudi Arabia has mostly been on social media. It's been in conservative circles. The nucleus around the king are very much still in very good contact with the royal family in Qatar. So this is, I think, the issue was very much only in the social media sphere. The real problem is really the UAE. In the UAE, it's the social media, it's the media which are state-run, as well as it's the government who have a massive problem with Qatar's support of non-state actors. It's not so much about Iran. It is the fact that Qatar has been hosting different streams of the Muslim Brotherhood. They have been hosting senior leaders of Hamad, and they have indirectly allowed certain people to operate and support groups in Syria who lived in Qatar. That does not mean that the Qatari government has ever financed directly any group that is related to the JBS or HTS or Al-Qaeda.
So
this
in retrospect, Andreas, sorry to interrupt you. In retrospect, is that unsound policy given that there's been such blowback from the neighbors?
Well, you have to understand, as you said before, Qatar is a small state. You've lived there for many years. It's a way of hedging the risks of trying to be a conduit, trying to be an intermediary in all these different conflicts. And let's not forget, many countries, including the West, have used these Qatari links to Syria, these Qatari links to Libya, because they have links that nobody else has. So that makes Qatar special. And the UAE have pursued a 180 degrees different foreign and security policy, one that is anti-Islamist, anti-non-state actor, one based purely on sovereignty. And Qatar has said, okay, if we want to make sense, if we want to bring stability to this region, we actually have to cooperate with non-state actors because the entire region is disintegrating, states are disintegrating, so we have to look for alternatives.
Okay, so Salman, when the other countries want to use the Qatari contacts with these other groups and their ability to finesse their way into these conflicts, then it's all well and good, isn't it?
Yeah. Actually, your guest actually proved my point because he said the Qatari government has the links and they use those links. And what the government of Qatar is doing is basically, or what they are saying is basically, they say they do not have those links. They say even that they don't have links to the Muslim Brotherhood. They just say that it's a media thing. So we are speaking of an extreme duality in the Qatari philosophical political practices. It's something that should be rejected. Why? Because terrorism should always be defined as terrorism. If you have a link to a terrorist group, you are a terrorist group. If you have a link with any non-state actors that want to undermine the security of the region, you are part of the problem, not part of the solution. The idea and the outcry that Qatar is a small country, and for that reason, because it's a small country, it has like a room to deal with non-state actors and a way to deal with those militias, either in Fajr Libya, in Libya, or Jabhat al-Nusra that is affiliated to Al-Qaeda in Syria, or some of the militias in the region and the Muslim Brotherhood. No, we cannot allow and tolerate any country in the region to basically use terrorism as a winning card, use terrorism as a pressure card. So what I'm trying to say, is Qatar, I think will get back to its consensus very soon because the amount of pressure they will have is very huge because the whole world right now has a completely new strategy to combat the evil of terrorism, specifically the terrorism that has been directed by the Iranian regime, by the radical Iranian regime.
I mean, you say the whole world. I suspect that's a bit of an exaggeration. Let's go to Hussam here. Hussam, as we sort of bring it all the way back to the beginning here. Is this a symptom of the Cold War between the Saudis and the Iranians getting more hot, this entire row, this entire spat, or is it something else?
Well, look, if you look at Saudi Arabia and what Saudi Arabia has been trying to do for the last year and a half since the Iranians signed the deal with the United States or the sanction relief, Saudi Arabia has been scrambling to gather some sort of, or to create some sort of Sunni bloc to counter increasing Iranian influence. And this row with Qatar, and I question Saudi's policy on this. I question how tactful and diplomatic they've been with the Qataris, because what they've been trying to do and what the Saudis have been desperate to do for the last 18 months or so is to present a united Sunni bloc. And this, you see this with Saudi Arabia's relationship with Egypt, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the King of Jordan, and of course the GCC bloc. And like Andrea said, there's a clear distinction between the social relationship of the GCC and the political relationship of the GCC. And so far, and at least in the public sphere, the political relationship of the GCC remains to be intact. Now, if we talk about allegations of supporting terrorism, I think, or supporting non-state actors in the region, I think a lot of countries in the region, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Iran, and Qatar, have all been accused of this.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll be keeping a close eye on the story as it unfolds. Unfortunately, I've got to wrap and move on. Hussam Abu Gabal, Andreas Krieg, and Salman Al Ansari, it's been a pleasure talking to all of you.